everybody. Welcome into another edition of Coyotes Corner alongside Dave Vest. I'm Luke Lapinski. Dave looking very professional on the other side of his office desk over there, or at least trying to look professional. It's the middle of June. Dave, how you doing over there?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Luke. It's Casual Friday, so this is as professional as it gets on a Friday.
Okay. I look more professional, and I'm not even at work today. Anyway, we got a lot of Coyote stuff to talk about here. I know we bring this up every podcast, but you keep thinking when you get to June and July, maybe there's less news. There's a lot of news, specifically Coyotes news. Specifically, on Thursday, a trade was announced. The Coyotes sending a fifth-round pick to the Dallas Stars in exchange for the exclusive rights to negotiate with defenseman Alex Goligoski before free agency opens in July. This is an intriguing deal for the Coyotes. If they get him signed, all of a sudden you've bolstered your blue line quite a bit.
Absolutely, without question. Just want to point out to the fans that the deal is not done by any stretch.
No.
But as you said, the Coyotes do have the exclusive negotiating rights with Alex until June 25th. No other team can make a pitch for him during this window. If he does not sign with the Coyotes, he becomes an unrestricted free agent as of July the 1st. But yeah, very excited. This is John Chaika's first trade as general manager of the Coyotes. And after speaking to John yesterday about it, sounds like there's some more to come. He seems very active at this point. The draft is a week away. I wouldn't be surprised if we have more news to report. John's exact quote to me was that he and his staff have many lines in the water.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, it's, as you said, there's not a dull moment here.
It really isn't. Yeah.
Very busy, as evidenced on our infamous whiteboard.
It's really your whiteboard. Now I know what you do all day. You just sit there and draw on your whiteboard. But hold on, before we get into anything else, there's a few different ways to look at this. First of all, to your point, John Chaika said we got a few different lines in the water. He also said this is sort of the first domino to fall, and so it kind of foreshadows a potentially exciting offseason for the Coyotes. Now, if this doesn't fall, you've lost a fifth-round pick, which is not nothing. I mean, there's been some great players picked in the fifth round. But the Coyotes have a ton of picks, and at a certain point, this is what you kind of need to do with them. I mean, you can't – we say this all the time. You've got all these really good forward prospects. They're not all going to be able to play at the NHL level someday. So, and you've got two more picks in the first round this year. I mean, you've got just more picks than almost anybody. And so part of the reason you want those picks is the flexibility and the options it gives you to maybe deal away a fifth-round pick to potentially get – a top-pairing defenseman, or it depends how the Coyotes want to work this. If they get Goligoski, they can put him with OEL, but then that's two left-handed shots. Maybe you put him on a different pairing, and you've got Connor Murphy with OEL. There's a lot of options there if they get this done, and all of a sudden you potentially have two very strong top defensive pairings, which, as we've seen, is the key to success in this league.
I like Alex Goligoski's durability. I mean, he's led the Dallas Stars in ice time the past 5 seasons. He plays about 24 minutes a game. He's only missed 2 games the last 3 full regular seasons. So, the guy plays quality minutes. He's very reliable. He was an alternate captain for the Stars, so there's some leadership there. It's interesting. He's coming to Arizona to meet with the Coyotes early next week. I just hope he doesn't hold the 119-degree temperature against us that's forecast for Monday.
Yeah, hopefully.
Could be a deal breaker.
Hopefully that's pointed out to him that it's not 119 here during hockey season. And to your point, playing all those games, 100 assists over the last 3 years. Not points, assists. So you're getting a puck-moving defenseman. The Coyotes already have that, and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. It's nice to have more than one. I mean, watching the playoffs this year, it was amazing to me that it was sort of a reminder that a lot of teams don't even have any. And the teams that had success and made it to the Stanley Cup both had at least 1 or 2 elite puck-moving defensemen in Pittsburgh and San Jose. Goligoski's been around this league. He's a vet. Like you said, he's got leadership, and he's an offensive weapon from the blue line. And if they get him signed, that move alone makes that defense a lot more intriguing, and there's a lot more upside there. And I'm not even sure they'd be done at that point with the defense. So it's an exciting move, and it kind of came out of nowhere yesterday.
Well, cross your fingers that it happens. Okay. As we said, it's not a done deal, but John Chayka seems very pleased with the fact that Alex is coming here. He made comments yesterday that Alex seemed excited about the potential to come here. So we'll just see how everything goes, and could be a huge move for the Coyotes. I don't recall the last time they brought in such a high-end free agent. I have to think back a little ways.
Yeah.
But it is an exciting possibility to add him to the mix.
And I like the way it was framed as almost as if it was part of a bigger plan. I mean, that's what I think what Coyotes fans want to hear is that, this move sets up this move or that or whatever. And in terms of, you have to sell a guy on your team. And as you said, he already kind of sounds excited about the Coyotes organization. You take a step back and we joke about the heat around town, but Dave Tippett's your coach. That's a player's coach that's respected by pretty much every player in the league. Shane Doan as your captain is somebody that, obviously everybody in the league knows him. They always have good things to say about him. And then look at the exciting young players on this team. I'm sure it'd be nice to play on a blue line with Oliver Ekman-Larsson as well. So there are quite a few selling points, which I'm sure they're going to be selling them on starting on Monday.
I'm curious, Luke, do you have NHL Draft fever yet?
I always have NHL Draft fever. Dave, you know that?
Less than a week away now.
I know. Finally. It's exciting.
It's up in Buffalo. Coyotes now with 7 picks. They traded one away yesterday, as you said, in the 5th round, number 128 overall. But still, 7 picks, 2 in the first round, 4 in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, 4 in the first 53 or whatever. It's remarkable, too, when you start to look. There's 5 teams that don't even have a first-round pick. And then you start to see that the Coyotes have 4 picks out of the first 52, 53 picks. So, that'll be next Friday. It starts on the 24th. We'll have the draft party here. You'll be in Buffalo.
Correct.
Doing Dave things.
Absolutely. Covering both rounds of the draft. I'm sorry, both days of the draft.
Yeah.
Round 1 is Friday. It's televised. Obviously, everyone will be here at Gila River. By everyone, I mean Coyotes fans. Day 2, if you've never been to the draft, it's really intriguing and fascinating to watch how day 2 unfolds.
Really?
It's much different than day 1. Obviously, the teams have less time to make their picks. They make that first pick in round 2, and then it's just off and running.
Just
and
goes.
If you're not paying attention, you can get left in the dust. I say that as a member of the media covering it. It moves very quickly. There's many moving parts, people spinning plates. It's just a lot of fun. It's very hectic, but in a good way.
And you brought this up with your interview with John Chayka yesterday, too. The second day of the draft is a lot of times where you win or lose the draft. Now, the Coyotes have an advantage over a lot of teams if you're just grading out the draft because they have 2 picks in the top 20. But overall, it's those guys you get either in the second round. We've seen the Coyotes already make some good picks there that are high-end prospects now. 3rd, 4th, deeper into the draft where maybe you grab a guy when everybody else is just picking players that ultimately end up filling out their minor league team. If you get a guy making an NHL impact, and again, I'll just go back to the Stanley Cup. Patrick Hornquist was the last pick in his draft. Joe Pavelski was a 7th rounder. And those guys were the huge reasons their teams were there.
You're stealing my thunder for this next comment a little bit. But I was just going to say, the Pittsburgh Penguins won the Stanley Cup, obviously. It wasn't 20 first-round draft picks on that team. By far. It wasn't. So, day 2, very important. John said to me that they're treating round 7 in the same regard as round number 1. It's not round number 1, round number 2 and 3, and then the scouts, kick their shoes off and lean back in the chair and just start throwing darts at the wall. This is very important to the future of the organization, and the entire scouting department takes it very seriously, and they spend a year crafting these lists of guys who are going to be available and in what rounds. So it's very intense. It's all very important, and you can win or lose a draft on day 2.
Yeah, well, this is, for the scouting staff, this is their Super Bowl. This is really where everything they do all year, to your point, they impact the team throughout the season, but this is where they really shine. And it's interesting because, for the most part, you're not going to know how well they did for a couple years. But now we're starting to look back at previous drafts and saying, that was nice to grab Christian Dvorak there in the 2nd round, or Christian Fischer later in the draft. It's just you won't know the end result for a couple years, but you're right. This is where you really build the foundation of your team. And I'll be at the party for round 1, and then I'll just kind of hang out and watch the next day. But the scouts, it is a full 48-hour ordeal.
Quick quiz for you.
All right.
What do these players have in common?
Okay.
Shane Doan, Jeff Skinner.
I was going to say, so far it's just Shane Doan. I can come up with a lot.
Sorry. Shane Doan.
Yes.
Ryan Suter.
Okay.
Jeff Skinner.
Believe they were all 7th overall picks, correct? I know Doan was, and I know Suter was.
Very good.
Okay. All right.
point being, you can get a very good player at number 7.
Absolutely. I mean, it depends on the draft, but if you look at this draft, it seems pretty loaded in the top 10 to 12 for sure. And what's interesting about hockey drafts as opposed to some other of the other sports, like once you get past this year, the 3 or 4 top picks, it's kind of based on team preference. And so there's a decent chance, even at 20, the Coyotes are going to get somebody else that maybe some team that's picking 25th had 9th on their board or something. The Coyotes are getting 20th because that other team wasn't there to scoop them up. So, and it's possible the Coyotes get 2 guys they had in their top 10. It's a nice spot to be in.
Connor Murphy, he was number 20.
Yep.
Brent Burns.
You've done your research on this.
A guy named Martin Brodeur.
He's decent too.
He turned out pretty good.
Yeah, pretty all right. What do you, with that 7th pick and with the variety of picks the Coyotes have, they have options. Another thing that John Chayka said in your interview with him, when you brought up the fact that, you look at the farm system, the defense, there's a ton of forwards in the farm system right now. And he said, yeah, obviously the defense is a focus. But at that 7th pick, they don't have to take a defenseman. You can just take the best player. And that was another thing I thought was interesting from your conversation with him. Maybe the best player is a defenseman. That's entirely possible, actually, with the way the draft looks this year. But you've got all these other picks. You can take defensemen. You're gonna see the Coyotes take a pretty good player at number 7.
You know what I thought was pretty interesting was on the team website.
Yes.
There's a poll asking fans what position the Coyotes should use the number 7 draft pick on, and I brought this up with John in the interview. Nearly 70% said center. And, I thought that was kind of odd. I would not have expected it to be that high, given that there's guys such as Dylan Strome and Christian Dvorak and Ryan McInnes already waiting in the wings in this pool of prospects the Coyotes have, and yet the fans overwhelmingly voted for center.
That is interesting. I think a lot of that, again, goes back to the playoffs, and the teams that have success and win Stanley Cups have elite centers, and even the 2 teams that were there this year, again, had a lot of talent at the center position for sure. But you're right. The Coyotes have a lot of that already in the system. Some of that's going to be coming up, though, next year, so maybe you want to replenish it. But I'm excited to go into this draft not caring what position they take. And that's nice, because in years past, it has absolutely been they have to get a center. It really has. And last year, I think that was very much the case. They really needed to add a center into their system, and it just so happened that Dylan Strome was the best player available at 3, so that worked out. Hopefully it works out again this year that way.
Okay, so let's remind the fans that they can watch the first round of the draft right here at Gila River Arena. It's on Friday, June the 24th. Luke, any more details?
They're unveiling the patch for the jerseys, which is kind of cool. Last year, of course, they unveiled the full jerseys. That was a really fun time.
What patch?
The patch. What is the patch? It's just the patch that goes on. It's the 20th anniversary, right? Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Correct.
And you're full of quizzes over there. This is suddenly a very intense show.
Well, you're doing well.
Thank you. I know. I'm 2 for 2 so far. So that'll be cool. I don't know who, in terms of guests, will be there, but I know myself and Bob Heathouse will be there. Burns and Gambo will be there from Arizona Sports 98.7, broadcasting from the arena. Pretty similar setup to last year. It was a great turnout last year. And, last year they had the 3rd pick. You had the 30th pick. So by the time the 30th one rolled around, it had been a while. This year picking 7th and 20th, assuming no other trades. So those will both get in there pretty quick. It's a good time to be out here. You got Haller running around. It's a party. Don't forget the party part of Draft Party.
Okay. What's next? Looking at the board, the preseason schedule.
You actually asked that question to the board.
I did.
You looked at the board and you're like, all right, board, is this how this works when I'm not here and you're just doing your daily activities?
It does. And I struggled a little bit because I'm trying to read my own handwriting. That says preseason
You're not the only
sked.
one. Yeah. I think that's what that says.
This was announced yesterday.
Yes.
And 8 games, 3 home games. The first September 26th against the LA Kings. It's a split squad game, so those 2 teams will be playing concurrently, one here in Arizona and one in LA.
They do that a lot, those 2 teams. I like it.
It's a tradition.
It's a good way to get a better look at all the prospects, too, because you get to run, 40 guys out there instead of just 20. So especially at the beginning of the preseason, that's a good feature for both organizations.
The other 2 home games, Saturday, October 1st against the Ducks, and then Friday, October 7th against the Sharks.
So 8 preseason games, all against Pacific Division rivals. It's a good measuring stick, certainly just to kind of see where you are against the teams in your division, which is an area the Coyotes had a lot of success in last year. And I think if you want to look way ahead and you want to try and predict this team's success for next season, maybe we'll get into this actually more when we talk about the Stanley Cup, because I thought that kind of boded well for the Coyotes. But Arizona had a lot of success against teams like LA and Anaheim last year because they're playing a little bit of a different style of hockey. And so we'll see. If you want to get into the playoffs, the quickest way to do it is to have success in your division. The Coyotes did that last year. Preseason games obviously don't count in that regard, but for a team like Arizona with the prospects that we keep talking about, those are huge because you have guys fighting for roster spots and jobs next year.
Also announced recently, the annual prospect development camp. That'll be taking place July 4th through the 8th. And a big change this year, the site of the camp right here in Glendale at Gila River Arena. Years past, it's been over in Scottsdale at the Ice Den, but not this year. Right here, I think it's done. I'm just assuming and presuming that it's an opportunity to give these young players a week's worth of experience in a building that they hope to play in someday.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing is you draft these players and you have these prospects. That's not where it ends. If you don't develop them, then you don't get anything out of them. And we've seen the Coyotes do a good job of developing their young players in recent years. That week, it's a lot of fun because, A, it's the middle of the week. Take a day off of work, come down, watch some hockey. By the way, it's nice and cool inside when it's 120 degrees outside in the middle of or early July. So that's a fun time. You mentioned it was in Scottsdale the last couple of years, and it was packed every year. So that's a nice feature of it being out here at Gila River Arena. Got a little more room for everybody because the turnout, and I don't know if it's just because of what I just said, people want a break from work and a break from the heat, or if it is simply the fact that Coyotes have one of the top 2 or 3 farm systems in hockey, and people want to see those players, or you're just hungry for hockey because it's July. Either way, I don't really care what the reason is. It's a good time to come out and do that.
The full roster will be announced at a later date, but we can confirm that Dylan Strome will be here, Christian Dvorak will be here, Brendan Perlini, and then, of course, all of the players drafted in Buffalo.
Yeah.
That's their opportunity to come out here. So expect to see all of those players in addition to some familiar faces.
And you can pick up a lot from watching that. If you're there and you're watching closely, I've said this a few times. I don't know if I've ever said it to you, but watching Anthony Duclair last year at Prospect Camp, because that was our first look at him up close. You'd seen him on TV playing for the Rangers or whatever, but to see him at Prospect Camp, and I remember going and wanting to see Strome because he had just been drafted, and to see how Domi had progressed because we had seen him a few times, but I remember just watching Duclair right around the net, just the hands just so quick. If there was a puck on his backhand, he'd get it to his forehand and put it in, or vice versa. If the puck was around him near the net, it was going in the net. And as it turns out, that carried through 82 games of the regular season too. So you can, if you watch closely, you can see what certain players' strengths are going to be. And like you said, we don't have the final list, but Dylan Strome, Christian Dvorak are two of the very, very best prospects in all of hockey. So even if you're a fan of another team just wandering through town, I don't know why you wouldn't stop in and see that.
Yeah, absolutely. The fans are invited to all the on-ice sessions. They're free, and that information is currently available on ArizonaCoyotes.com. And by information, I'm speaking about the times of the on-ice session.
Schedule. And the potential game on the 8th,
right,
which is a new feature this year, which is exciting.
Great point. The finale of this year's development camp is a game. It's going to be played Friday night. Did you just say that?
I just said Friday. I was just kind of setting you up. I didn't want to steal all your thunder.
Friday night, July the 8th, 7 p.m. at Gila River Arena.
Yeah.
An intra-squad game. The genesis of this idea is that the coaching staff wants these players to experience what a game day is like in the NHL. There will be morning skates, there'll be team meetings, and then the game will go on as if it is a regular NHL game. I'm really excited about that. I think it's a great idea.
It is. You see it now and you're like, why doesn't every team do this? Because for all the reasons you just laid out, you get those players that a day of experience of this is life in the NHL, which is anytime you talk to a rookie or a second-year player or a third-year player, they say that's one of the biggest things is just adjusting to the routine of the NHL. And I get this. This is just 1 week, but it's cool to sort of almost have a dry run of what that would be like. But then also for the fans, you get to watch all these prospects go up against each other in an actual game. And, after a while, if you've been out there, you've been watching the drills, like I said, there's things you can pick up. But at the very end, it's cool to see them actually play in a real-life game scenario and see how Dylan Strome matches up with Christian Dvorak, or see how Christian Fisher matches up. Christian Fisher's a guy I'm excited about. Ryan McInnes, too. Some of these players that bring different things to this team going forward. And so to see them out there actually matching up against each other and some of the other top prospects in the system, Max Latunov, too, if he's there, I mean, there's a lot of different big names that we can see in action.
Connor Garland, he's kind of stole the show for me last year. He came out of the woodwork, and I wasn't expecting much from him, and he was a lot of fun to watch every time he had the puck. Again, the full roster will be announced at a later date, but those players we did mention earlier, they for sure will be there. Last but not least,
Stanley Cup.
Yes.
It's done. Now, you're bringing this up because you want to tell everybody that you were right last time we did the show.
Well, that, of course, but...
As was I.
You were. I'll give us both proper credit for that. The Penguins, of course, winning the Stanley Cup final. They beat San Jose in 6 games, as predicted here.
And here.
Final thoughts on what you saw. I know you grew up in the Pittsburgh area or in Pittsburgh itself. I would imagine, I know the Coyotes are your first team, the Penguins number 2. So thoughts on the Penguins winning the Cup?
You could see a lot of... There's a few different ways to look at this, and I'm going to tie it back to the Coyotes in a second, but just in general, for the Penguins, I think you saw a lot of frustration from the last 5, 6, 7 years for that organization channeled the right way. We've seen in years past where the Penguins would maybe have a better roster, and they'd be playing Philadelphia in round 1, and they'd be up 1-0 in the series, and then when they lost a game, I don't know if they expected it to be easier, because guys like Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin got there so early in their careers that they got frustrated, and then they were out. I mean, they would lose a game, they'd lose 3 in a row. This year, you saw the exact opposite of that. When they lost a game, they came back, played better the next game. We mentioned last time we did the show, Matt Murray, who worked with John Elkin a lot when he was younger. He's still young, but when he was even younger, he was phenomenal. He could have easily won the Conn Smythe. I think what I take from this, just in terms of the league going forward, is it was interesting to me how Pittsburgh's speed overwhelmed really everybody they played, but specifically San Jose at times, because San Jose is a team that the Coyotes see a lot, and San Jose, to me, is representative of a lot of teams in the Western Conference that are built on sort of physicality, and they have some skill. I'm not saying that, but physicality and just being a bigger team, that's what speed can do to a team like that. We saw it on a much smaller scale, the Coyotes' speed against LA and Anaheim. It was very similar to those first few games last year where LA and Anaheim looked stunned by how quick the Coyotes were. So it's just interesting to me when you see everybody in your division going one way. If you go the other way and if you can pull it off, you can be really dangerous.
Do you think the Sharks will be the team to beat again this year in the Western Conference, or do you see them maybe taking a step back given how they kind of, I don't want to say collapsed against the Penguins, but, there were high expectations for them, and clearly they didn't come even close to meeting them. A couple of guys had some problems on that big stage. Joe Pavelski was kind of invisible in the series.
They couldn't get him the puck. I mean, again, it goes back to that speed. Pittsburgh's players were using speed to block the passing lanes and the shooting lanes. They couldn't even get Pavelski the puck in scoring situations. I'm still impressed by what San Jose did this year, and I think they'll obviously be right there. But if you're saying in the West, I'm still going to defer to the Blackhawks as being at the top of the West until I've seen them go out early a couple times. But in the Pacific Division, I was talking about this with some people earlier this week.
On another podcast.
That division's wide open. I mean, it is wide open, really. And that's taking nothing away from San Jose. They could easily go back to the Cup next year. They're not really losing any key players. They could also finish 4th in that division because that's the one division in hockey where there are conflicting styles now, and it's pretty noticeable. I mean, you've got speed teams like the Coyotes and the Flames potentially against, like I said, those kind of bigger, more rugged teams like LA and Anaheim, and to a certain extent San Jose.
All right, Luke, good stuff as always. I enjoy talking to you.
But you'll only talk to me if there's a microphone in front of your face. It's awkward.
It's in my contract.
Okay, that's fine. You have a contract for that?
Sort of.
If you write something on a piece of...
It's on a napkin
yeah,
from
that
Subway.
Make it a contract.
Well, I signed it.
No, okay. Well, I guess that's all that matters. Do you have anything else you want to toss out there? Are you excited to go to the draft?
I am excited to go to the draft. And I invite fans to follow along on ArizonaCoyotes.com. We'll be covering both days and the days leading up to the draft and the days after the draft. We'll have a lot of exclusive content there, so I invite everybody to follow along as we chronicle the draft. And I look forward to doing another podcast real soon because I think we both get the sense here that there's going to be some news coming fast and furious all summer long. Yeah,
I mean, that's a good point. The draft comes up next week. You start to see a lot of activity around the league. We're actually kind of already seeing it. The Coyotes weren't the only team that made a move this week, but when you get closer to the draft, you start to potentially see some trades. Not saying the Coyotes will be involved in those, but they are a team that I'm sure other teams are calling, at least because they have all those picks. And then free agency starts not even a week after that. So yeah, there's a lot of potential ways news could break here really any day over the next couple weeks. So we'll talk again, I would guess, in a couple weeks.